He said his baby was asleep, but I still hear her crying sometimes. The sound comes back to me every Halloween. That faint, muffled whimper in the dark, the kind you tell yourself must be the wind. But deep down, I know it wasn't. It happened when I was 7, Halloween night. The air smelled like wet leaves and cheap plastic masks, and the streetlights buzzed with that orange hum that makes everything feel slower. My mom had dropped me off at my friend Sean's house to trick-or-treat, just me, him, and his older friend Johnny. No parents, no rules, just the three of us with pillowcases and flashlights that barely worked. Sean's place always made me uneasy, though I couldn't explain why. The stale scent of cat fur, the quiet TV glow from his sister's room, the way the hallway lights flickered when someone walked past. That night, it all felt heavier, quieter, like the neighborhood was holding its breath. We told ourselves we'd stay out late, fill our bags until they ripped. But even before we reached the end of the block, I remember glancing over my shoulder, wondering why every shadow looked like it was watching us. We'd been out for hours when the streets finally emptied. Porch lights clicked off one by one, and the laughter of other kids disappeared into the wind until it was just us. Two boys dragging pillowcases full of candy through quiet, damp air. My flashlight flickered, and every time it did, I caught Sean glancing over his shoulder. We both knew it. We'd wandered farther than we should have. The next block felt different. The houses were older, the lawns darker, and there wasn't a single voice around. That's when I noticed him, a man pushing a stroller, a few houses behind. He walked slowly, rhythmically, like he wasn't in a hurry to get anywhere. At first, I thought he was just another dad finishing up trick-or-treating. But the longer he stayed behind us, the more deliberate his steps seemed. We stopped at a house, and when I looked back, he was closer. The streetlight above him flickered, washing him in pale orange. He was humming something soft, a lullaby, slow and offbeat. When he finally called out to us, his voice was calm, polite even. "How's the trick-or-treating going, boys?" Sean answered. The man smiled and said his daughter was asleep in the stroller, that he didn't want to wake her. Then he offered us the rest of his candy, said he hadn't given much out. It sounded normal, but something about his tone, quiet and too even, felt wrong. He pointed up the street. "My house is just up this way." Sean hesitated, then shrugged. We followed behind, a few steps back. The stroller wheels clicked on the pavement, keeping time with his footsteps. The further we walked, the quieter everything got. No wind, no cars, no voices, just that rhythm. He asked us where we lived, if our parents were waiting. Every few steps, he leaned into the stroller and whispered something, then looked back to make sure we were still following. When we reached his house, I noticed right away, no lights, no pumpkins, no sound. He walked straight up to the door and unlocked it without turning on the porch light. "Come in," he said. "I'll grab the candy bags." Sean went first. I followed, uneasy. The air inside was thick and stale, like the place had been closed up for months. It smelled like wet wood, and something faintly sour. The only light came from a small lamp in the corner, casting everything in a sickly yellow glow. He pushed the stroller into the middle of the room and said, "Wait, right there." Then he disappeared down the hall. I heard drawers open, something metallic clink. I turned to Sean, whispered that we should wait outside. He didn't answer, just stared at the stroller. It sat perfectly still, the fabric cover pulled down low. There was no sound, not even breathing. Sean stepped forward, slow, careful. I wanted to tell him not to, but my voice caught in my throat. He reached out and lifted the flap. For a second, he didn't move. Then he turned to me, his face pale, eyes wide, and whispered, "We need to go." He grabbed my arm and we ran. The front door creaked behind us as we bolted out, our bags slamming against our legs. I didn't look back, didn't want to see if he was following. We didn't stop running until we reached the next corner. Sean wouldn't talk. He just kept muttering, "It was empty, it was empty," over and over. That's when a woman shouted from across the street, "Hey, you boys, wait!" She ran toward us, breathless, eyes full of panic. "Do you know that man?" she asked. I said no, that he'd offered us candy. Sean's voice cracked as he said, "The stroller. It was empty." The woman froze. Her face changed. Not shock, but recognition. She grabbed our hands and told us to come with her. We got into her car, and she locked the doors right away. As she started driving, she kept checking the mirror. I turned around once and saw it. A faint figure at the end of the street, standing perfectly still beside the curb, the stroller next to him. We didn't say a word the whole drive. The woman dropped us off at home and talked to my mom, her voice shaking. I remember sitting on my bed later that night, the candy still untouched in the pillowcase, my ears ringing with that same soft sound, the wheels of a stroller rolling slowly down a quiet street. Every Halloween since, I swear I still hear it, just faintly, that squeak of wheels on pavement, moving closer even when no one's there. When the woman dropped me off, my mom was already waiting. I told her everything, the man, the stroller, how we ran. She didn't say a word, just called the police and told me to go to my room. I sat there in the dark, hearing her voice through the wall, then silence. No sirens, no answers. The next day, she said only one thing: never talk about it again. I never saw police on that street, and Sean and I stopped being friends after that. Years later, I passed that neighborhood once. Most houses look different, except one. Curtains still drawn, porch light dead. As I walked by, I heard it again, the faint squeak of stroller wheels behind me. I didn't turn around, and I never walk that way anymore. He rang the doorbell 3 times before I realized he wasn't a kid. The porch light caught the edge of his mask, cheap plastic smeared red around the mouth, and for a second I thought he was smiling, but he didn't move. He just stood there, one hand clutching an empty brown sack, the other resting on the doorknob like he was waiting for me to open it. It was Halloween night, 2016, the kind of quiet suburban Monday where you can hear every leaf scrape across the driveway. My parents were out, and I'd been handing out candy since sunset, mostly toddlers and tired parents. By 9, the neighborhood was dead. The air had that cold, wet smell it gets before rain, and even my dog had stopped barking. When the bell rang again, I almost didn't answer until I saw his shadow move across the window, taller than anyone I'd seen all night, still as a statue, watching. I stood behind the door longer than I should have, just listening. The house was too still. Not quiet, but waiting. Through the frosted glass, I could see his shadow, tall, stiff, unmoving. My dog, Vito, pressed against my leg, growling so low it vibrated through me. I whispered, "We're out of candy," hoping he'd hear and leave. He didn't move, he just stood there. I turned off the porch light, thinking that would send him away. The silence that followed was worse than the sound. Then came the faint squeal of the storm door handle, metal scraping metal, followed by a hollow thud. That was when it hit me. I hadn't locked it. My heart started pounding in my throat. Vito barked wildly, and I covered his muzzle, praying whoever was out there would just walk away. Finally, I heard footsteps, slow, heavy, dragging through the wet leaves. I waited until I couldn't hear them anymore, then locked the main door and every window in the house. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped the keys. Upstairs, I tried to convince myself it was just a prank, probably a bored teenager trying to scare people. I put on a show to drown the noise in my head, the flicker of the laptop lighting the room. But even over the sound, I could feel it, that heavy silence pressing down on the house. Then came the doorbell. It wasn't a normal ring. It was one long, deliberate press, like whoever was out there wanted me to know they weren't done. Vito jumped off the bed, barking again. I sat frozen, staring at the hallway. The bell rang again. Twice, faster this time. I grabbed my phone and texted my family. "Someone's at the door again. Dressed as a clown. Won't leave." No one replied. Then came a faint metallic clack. The storm door latch. The sound crawled under my skin. I muted my phone, afraid even the vibration would tell him I was still awake. I could hear him shifting outside, slow, patient, not walking away. And then a sharp snap. Metal bending. The storm door latch breaking. I held my breath as the main doorknob started to turn. Once, twice, harder each time. The entire door frame rattled. I started to dial 911, but before I pressed the call button, silence. Everything stopped. I waited. 10 minutes, maybe more. When nothing else happened, I told myself he was gone. I crawled into bed and pulled the blanket over me like it could actually protect me. My body refused to relax, but my exhaustion didn't care. I must have drifted off. I woke up to Vito's growl. Not loud, just a low, constant rumble. His body was tense, his eyes fixed on the window. Then I heard it too. A soft tap, then another. Slow, steady. It took me a few seconds to understand it was coming from outside. My bedroom window. The one on the second floor. Every instinct told me not to look, but I moved anyway. I pulled the blinds open and froze. That same clown mask stared back at me through the glass. The red paint around the mouth was smeared whiter than before. His eyes, or at least the black mesh where his eyes should have been, were locked straight on mine. One gloved hand rested against the glass. The other gripped the top of my dad's ladder, leaning against the side of the house. He tilted his head, slow, curious. Then he tapped again. Tap, tap. The sound muffled through the window, but sharp enough to cut through my chest. For a few seconds, I couldn't move. My body just shut down. Then Vito lunged, barking furiously. The noise snapped me out of it. I stumbled backward, grabbed my phone, and ran into my parents' bedroom, locking the door behind me. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely type. When the 911 operator answered, my voice came out as a whisper. He's outside my window. He climbed up. The operator told me to stay where I was, that help was on the way. I sat there, clutching the phone, listening to every creak in the house. At one point, I could swear I heard footsteps. Faint, deliberate, moving across the roof. When red and blue lights finally flashed through the curtains, everything went still. The police searched around the house. They found the storm door latch bent and broken, and my dad's ladder leaning against the siding under my window. But no footprints. No fingerprints. Just faint smudges where his gloved hands had pressed the glass. They told me it was probably a prank. I wanted to believe them, but I saw the look one officer gave the window before he left. That quiet pause that said otherwise. I packed a bag and drove to my friend Adam's house before sunrise. When I reached his porch, I hesitated before ringing the bell. My finger hovered there, frozen. Because even now, every time I hear a doorbell, I feel that same cold air behind me, the kind that means someone's standing too close. Waiting. The police said it was just a prank, but the house didn't feel the same after that. The air stayed cold, heavy, like he'd left a part of himself inside. I sat awake till morning, staring at the window, afraid to blink in case that mask reappeared. My parents changed the locks, but no lock fixes what that kind of fear does. Years later, I still freeze when a doorbell rings. It's not the sound that scares me now, it's the silence right after. Because sometimes, in that quiet, I swear I can still hear faint footsteps on the roof. Slow, deliberate, waiting. When we got to the house, the lights were on, but no one answered the door. Music played inside, faint, muffled, like it was coming from a floor below us, and every few seconds we swore we heard voices. But when we finally pushed the door open, the sound stopped. All of it. It was late October, the Saturday before Halloween. The air was cold enough that our breath hung white under the streetlight, and the wind smelled like wet leaves and cheap beer. We'd been searching for a last-minute party all night, when one of my friends found this one through a guy she barely knew. The address looked normal enough. A big house at the end of a quiet street, cars parked out front, porch light glowing orange. From the outside, it looked alive. But stepping inside, it didn't feel like a party. It didn't even feel like anyone lived there. At first, it felt like any other college house party. Dark lights, cheap decorations, that thick, sweet smell of alcohol mixed with sweat. But the longer we stayed, the more it felt wrong. The air inside was colder than outside, and the music, that faint bass we heard through the door, wasn't coming from any speaker we could find. It sounded distant, like it was coming from underground. A man came up to us soon after we walked in. Older, maybe late 40s, early 50s, dressed neatly, not like anyone else there. He smiled too easily. Said his name was John, and that he was Luke's dad. I remember that because none of us knew a Luke. He told us Luke was the one hosting, but we never saw anyone by that name the whole night. Still, he was charming in that forced, too polite way that made you want to be polite back. He offered to take our drinks to the kitchen, said we could keep them cold in the cooler. The kitchen was dim, lit by orange string lights that buzzed faintly. There were 3 big coolers, all filled with ice and cans of beer. But when I leaned in, the ice wasn't melting. It looked like glass. Cold but dry. My friends didn't notice. They just laughed, dropped their drinks in, and thanked him. John followed us back to the living room. He was trying too hard to make conversation, asking about our costumes, our majors, where we were from. His smile never really left his face, but his eyes didn't match it. They flicked between us, mostly toward my friend Kate. When he laughed, it sounded hollow, like someone mimicking what laughter should sound like. We started playing beer pong with a few guys near the back, and for a while it felt normal again. But something about the house just didn't fit. The walls were bare. No pictures, no furniture, not even curtains. Just empty rooms filled with people who didn't seem to know each other. I asked one guy how he heard about the party, and he said he thought it was some frat thing. Another said he'd seen it on Instagram. None of them knew whose house it was. Then John called out our names from the kitchen. I didn't remember telling him mine, but he said it perfectly. First and last. Shots! He yelled. The girls cheered, so I followed. There were 4 glasses lined up on the counter. The tequila smelled sharp and chemical, like nail polish remover. He raised his glass and said, "To new friends." It burned going down, more than it should have. I gagged and laughed it off, but something about the aftertaste made my stomach twist. I brushed it off. Maybe just bad tequila. But within minutes, the room felt different. The lights looked dimmer. The noise seemed further away. My head was heavy, like I was sinking into something. John asked what our favorite drinks were and started mixing cocktails while we went back to play another round. Every few minutes he came back with new drinks. Mine was clear, fizzy. I took a sip out of habit even though I was already drunk. The next few minutes after that are a blur. I remember leaning on the table, trying to focus on the ball. Then, nothing. Just flashes. Kate laughing. The sound of ice clinking. John's voice behind me, whispering something I couldn't make out. Then, darkness. When I came to, I was in a car, my friend's car, parked outside my house. The windows were fogged. My head was spinning so hard I thought I'd throw up. My clothes smelled faintly of bleach and perfume. Someone helped me out and walked me to the door. I don't even remember saying goodbye. Inside, the house was quiet. My parents were asleep. I checked my phone. A bunch of missed texts, one from an unknown number. I opened it. The first message was from me. "Hey, it's my name." Then a reply. "John, smiley face, nice to meet you." The timestamp said it was from earlier that night, sometime between the beer pong game and the blackout. There were more messages. "You looked so cute." "Where did my favorite girls go?" Then, hours later, "Where are you? You left something here. I'm outside." The last message was sent at 2:07 a.m. I felt sick. I sent screenshots to the group chat, and one by one my friends started replying, piecing together what they remembered. Kate said I started acting weird after that last drink, staring at nothing, barely speaking. They said John kept hovering around, trying to get us to go see the basement. They said when they tried to leave, he got angry. That's when 2 police cars pulled up outside. Someone had called in a noise complaint. Everyone scattered. My friend Shauna mentioned something I hadn't noticed before. How empty the house had been. No furniture, no photos, not even light switches that worked. Just extension cords running along the floor into one locked door in the hallway. We decided to take everything, the texts, the number, what happened, to the police the next morning. The officer at the front desk asked if we were talking about the vacant house party. We all looked at each other, confused. He explained there had been reports of people breaking into an abandoned property and using it for a Halloween event. The house we'd been in had been vacant for months. We told him that was impossible. There was power, music, people. But when we drove back later that day, the street was quiet. No cars, no lights. The windows were boarded up. It looked nothing like the place we'd been in hours before. The police traced the number John used. It wasn't real. A VoIP line. Untraceable. I didn't sleep for 3 nights after that. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart stopped. Even now, years later, I still don't know what happened in that house, or who that man really was. But sometimes, when I think about that night, I remember something small. The way the ice in those coolers never melted, even after hours under the lights. And sometimes, when I walk home late and pass a house with its porch light glowing orange, I swear I can still hear that same muffled bass. Faint, deep, echoing from somewhere below the floor. Skingy. The police said they'd look into it. But weeks passed and none of us heard back. Every time I called, they said the same thing. No leads, no suspects, no trace of anyone named John. I tried to move on, but it's hard to sleep when you don't know what you survived. The thought that he could still be out there, that he might be watching someone else's story play out right now, never really leaves me. A month later, I got a text from another unknown number. Just one line, "Missed you at the party this year." I deleted it, but sometimes I still dream of that house. The lights on, the music faint, the door unlocked, waiting.